Hello, my name is Sebastian Dakin, and today's topic is on DDoS attacks on Boston's Children's Hospital. So, the attack on the Children's Hospital, there was an attack where the attacker installed malware on 40,000 different network routers, which flooded 65,000 IP addresses, bringing the whole entire network of the Boston Children's Hospital offline. Also, this did not allow the hospital to have surrounding contact to other hospitals in the area. And the attack lasted for 2 weeks long, which cost the hospital $300,000. Not only did it cost the hospital $300,000, but they also lost $300,000 in donations, disabling their fundraising portal. Just before the attack on the Children's Hospital, the same attacker attacked a Wayside Facility Treatment Center where the patient was being held at, and that was on March 2014, where the attack cost the Wayside Facility Center over $8,000 in recovery. So you may be wondering who would attack a children's hospital and what the reasons for it would be. Most people would think is a very unethical attack. So what happened is a girl named Justina. She was a teenage girl that was taken away from her parents. The hospital had diagnosed her with psychiatric issues, and she claimed that her parents were interfering with her treatment. And so the attack is basically an attack of a protest. The attacker, named Mr. Gusfield, he was convicted by a federal jury. Before he was convicted, the police suspected Twitter group Anonymous Attackers were the ones behind the attack. Later to find out, Mr. Gusfield was actually a member of Anonymous Attackers. On October 2014, a few months after the attack, the police searched Gusfield's apartment, where he was not yet convicted, but they confiscated all of his computers, servers, and hard drives. In 2016, a wellness call was made at Mr. Gusfield's home of residency because his employers hadn't heard from him in a few weeks. Just a few weeks later, there was a distress call to the Coast Guard where it was him and his wife that needed to be rescued right outside the coast of Cuba. So upon his rescue, he was then arrested, where he was charged for conspiracy to damage protected computers with a minimum of 5 years in prison and 3 years of probation and a fine of $250,000. He was also charged for damaging protected computers with a minimum of 10 years in prison, 3 years of probation, and another fine of $250,000. He claimed that he wasn't guilty, and he planned on challenging the prosecutors for taking Justina away without full knowledge of what actually happened. So this entire attack was due to the fact that he was protesting that the hospital in the state of Massachusetts had taken Justina away from their parents without a proper jury and proper trial for the actions that they were accused of. So to better understand why this happened and exactly what it did to the hospital, you need to know what a DDoS attack is. The DDoS attack, this acronym is Disrupted Denial of Service. It is a malicious attempt to flood a network, and it works a lot like vehicle traffic on the roads, where you're trying to turn into the traffic, but there's so much traffic on the roads that you can never turn and get onto the network. So in most cases, in most attacks, the attacker installs a malware onto a computer that's malicious. And when you take control of a computer, usually by remoting in, it becomes a bot. So with multiple computers, usually hundreds of thousands of computers, it is known as a botnet. So there are different types of DDoS attacks. So the first one is an ICMP attack, also known as an echo request. which pings and floods a network and sends packets rapidly, not giving networks enough time to reply. It slows down incoming and outgoing speed, which then the network becomes so slow that the network is no longer accessible. A SYN flooding, also known as SYN flooding. SYN flooding is attacks the vulnerable area of a TCP connection, which is basically a three-way handshake. Usually when conducting a SYN request, you must complete a SYN attack or SYN acknowledge, which is a response from the host. You also have to confirm it with a ACK response from the requester. When a SYN flood is conducted, the requester / hacker sends multiple SYN requests repeatedly and responding to the SYN attack or SYN acknowledge response. The requester may also send a SYN request from a fake IP address. This eventually eliminates any new connections onto the network, which creates a denial of service. Another DDoS attack is known as the ping of death. A ping of death is when an attacker sends as many malicious pings to one computer. Usually the maximum size of a ping packet is 65,535 bytes. By sending so many pings at a time, the attacker's goal is to send an IP packet that is greater than 65,535 bytes. In this style of an attack, what usually ends up happening is that it overflows the computer's memory buffers that are meant for the packet, which then causes a denial of service for the actual legitimate packets. A Solaris attack. A Solaris attack are a little bit different than most DDoS attacks. Solaris focuses on attacking web servers. Solaris works by trying to use multiple connections to one server. However, these connections are not full connections. They are partial connections without sending an actual full connection. By doing this, the web server reaches the maximum amount of connections, which will then make the web servers full, not allowing any other users. With the NTP amplification attack, the attacker accesses a bunch of network time protocol servers and overloads the servers they want to attack with UDP traffic. Attackers can gain a list of NTP servers that have public accessibility, which then causes a terrible and damaging high bandwidth, high volume DDoS attack. A HTTP flood is defined by the writer of the article DDoS attacks as in an HTTP flooded DDoS attack, the attacker exploits seemingly legitimate HTTP GET or POST requests to attack a web server or application. The HTTP floods do not use malformed packets, spoofing, or reflection techniques, and require less bandwidth than other attacks to bring down the targeted site or server. The attack is most effective when it forces the server or applications to allocate the maximum resources possible in response to each single request. So there are several reasons why people perform DDoS attacks. One, they might want to gain profit or ransom. This could be used like basically in a hostage situation where they say we're not going to let your network go back to normal unless you give us a certain amount of money. It could be self-induced or basically an accident. So somebody that works within that company could accidentally press the wrong button and cause the network to go down or to be flooded. Some people use it as like a small attack to distract for a larger attack. And other people just use it to practice. They want to see how well they are at performing these attacks and to see basically how good they are. There's also companies that hire people to attack other companies that are maybe their rival companies, bringing them down off the network for a few weeks or a few days to gain the tactical advantage. And something I did not know is there is cyber gangs. And these cyber gangs basically attack or basically want to gain territory by attacking certain companies within a certain district or area, which gives them the higher up when it comes to being the better cyber gang within that area. Other times, people just have no reason for the attack. They just want to do it. They just know that they can do it, so they do it. And as like this case with the Boston hospital, it was an act of protest. The attacker, Mr. Guttersfield, he was angry and he wanted to attack the hospital and a way of basically speaking freely. So some legalities of DDoS attacks. It's not necessarily illegal to attack a company as long as you don't cause any damage or they don't lose profit. So sometimes companies will hire companies or certain people to conduct a DDoS attack on their company to test how well their cybersecurity system is and to prepare their employees for future attacks. Some people say that conducting a DDoS attack may be taken away, or for basically getting in trouble for it, is taking away their Second Amendment rights. Like in this case, where Mr. Guttersfield, he was attacking out of protest because what the state had done was wrong and what the hospital did was wrong by taking away Justina from their family. Now, when doing attacks, it is highly illegal to attack any kind of government facility. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which was created by the United States government, basically states on different terms that anything that can cause great danger to the United States of America is highly illegal, and you could face several years in prison, not the rest of your life. So, in conclusion, we've talked about several things: DDoS attacks, how they're very harmful, and how they can lose companies several money. DDoS attacks on the Children's Hospital, why they did it, which basically I've said several times throughout this presentation, that it was due to an act of protest, and who the attacker was, Mr. Guttersfield, and his attempt to basically flee the country after he was pretty sure that he was going to prison for a long time. The different types of charges, what he was charged of, and what other people could be charged with. Different types of attacks, the reason for attacks, and all the legalities behind it.